And hello, fabulous AP students. This is Mr. Jacobson. I'm excited to be with you today. Today we're going to talk about what is going on in the world of 1200 to 1450 in South and Southeast Asia. So there's much to discuss. Let us begin. Okay, so what is South Asia? Whenever I'm referring to South Asia, I'm basically referring to India. So on the AP exam, they're not going to say India if they have some kind of an essay or they're referring to it. They'll just say South Asia. Okay, this region has a long history of decentralization because of the high diversity of people and political disunity. Prior to 1200, India was ruled first by the Mauryan Empire and then later the Gupta Empire. By 1200 CE, the subcontinent of India will be politically fragmented into northern India and to southern India. So India is going to be broken up. Northern India and southern India, and they're going to have very different ideologies connected to them. India is protected by Himalayan mountains from the north and the northeast. So if you look here, you see the Himalayas. So one thing India has going for them is that they're protected there. I mean, you can't take armies over the massive Himalayas and then come into the subcontinent of India. That'd be just too grueling a task. It would be nearly impossible. So many people could not attack from that area. However, they will get attacked from this area, and they have high exposure because the Silk Road is right here just above them. So northern India is going to get a lot of interaction with other people, as we'll discuss. So let's talk about northern India. So it's less stable than southern India because they were more vulnerable to attacks. As I said, they had more interaction with people and as a result, more conflict. However, one of the kingdoms that emerged in northern India is something called the Rajput kingdoms. And this was formed after the Gupta Empire fell. And it was made up of many Hindu kingdoms of clan leaders who often fought against each other. And because they kept fighting over each other, they couldn't unify. And because they couldn't unify, it was largely decentralized as leaders vied for power over the other. So Muslims are, Islam has been spreading since 630 CE. And it's going to push right up against this area, which is modern day Pakistan. So Islam's pushing right up against India and Hinduism, and eventually they're going to start getting really attacked. So the lack of centralization due to the Rajput kingdoms led to the attacks by surrounding Muslims and the destruction and pillaging of Hindu and Buddhist holy sites. Northern India is going to get overrun by people who are Islamic, and it's going to dramatically change the culture and the ideology of that area. Over time, Islamic influence will spread throughout northern India. So eventually, an Islamic kingdom is going to prevail. It's called the Delhi Sultanate. So we have Muslims who finally conquered the kingdom, the city of Delhi in India, about 1206. So during this time, you would imagine you have a Muslim government, but largely the people that they are governing are Hindu. So you're going to see some massive problems here because these Hindus are going to start resenting Muslims. For one thing, they want them to convert. Hindus are like, look, I've been a Hindu and we've been Hindus for thousands of years. We're not converting. Another thing they asked them to do, or they made them do, was something called the jizya. And a jizya is what Muslims did in areas they conquered. They would put a tax on non-Muslims. If they would not convert, fine, we're going to tax you. And so that's just going to piss off them more, the Hindus. Okay? Sultans had difficulty imposing their policies in a vast land as diverse as India. Before the rulers could conquer the lands of southern India, the Mongolians attacked the north. So there was plans for the Delhi Sultanate to try to expand into the southern India. However, before those plans could be done, the Mongolians, who were going to conquer virtually the world, or at least the old world, at least we know as we know, okay, they're going to conquer a great deal of Asia parts. We'll talk about them. They're going to be very interesting to discuss. But anyway, they're going to attack the Delhi Sultanate, and the Delhi Sultanate, they will repel them, but it's going to take great strength for them to do so, and the Delhi Sultanate will not be able to attack southern India and unify all of India. As a result, the Delhi Sultanate will eventually be conquered by the Mughals, who, ironically, claim ancestry from deriving from the Mongolians. And so that's for northern India. What's going on in southern India? So southern India is a little more stable. You have the Chola dynasty, and it extended all the way down to this area here, Ceylon, or modern day Sri Lanka. And then you have the Vijayanagara, try saying that 3 times fast, empire. And what the Vijayanagara Empire did is it blocked the advancement of Islam from the Delhi Sultanate. So this empire stopped the Delhi Sultanate from being able to conquer all of India and kind of making the whole place an Islamic area. So Hinduism is still going to thrive in southern India, and that's very important to understand. Because had not the Vijayanagara Empire been there, then India could be a very different place, religious-wise, even today. Okay, so we have 2 major religions coming together and clashing, Hinduism and Islam, right? And there are differences, a lot of differences. For one thing, Hinduism is polytheistic. Islam is monotheistic. So that's a major difference. And not only is Islam monotheistic, it's like strictly monotheistic. And then another one you have holy sites in the Hindu religion where you can have images of gods. In fact, it was expected on a Hindu temple to have images of all your gods, show their faces. However, showing faces of holy figures is forbidden in Islam, like Allah, Muhammad can't do that. And then also Hinduism has a caste system, whereas Islam believes there's equality for all believers. Hinduism believes there's many holy texts like the Vedas, the Upanishads, and however Islam is saying no, there's just the Quran. And Hinduism isn't really big on proselytizing per se. However, Islam likes to proselytize and likes to gain converts. And so you can see there's many differences going on there. Islam attracted many Hindus that were in the low part of the caste system, and those people who were in the low ones would convert hoping to improve their social standing. Many Muslim merchants moved to Indian port cities. When they married an Indian girl in that port city in India, she would have to convert to her husband's religion. So then we're slowly starting to get converts. One way, people are trying to leave the caste system. Other people are marrying Muslims and then becoming Muslim themselves. And of course, as Buddhism sort of started falling apart in India, as it was slowly weakening in India but gaining in China, a lot of the Buddhists in India started switching to Islam because they just felt more they had more of an affinity towards Islam and its practices versus the strict Hindu caste system in Hinduism. Okay, so we have social structures going on in South Asia. India's caste system is probably its strongest historical continuity because it lends stability to a politically destabilized land. If everybody knows their place in society, then that gives order, unification, uniformity, if you will. So, although the caste system may be rigid and very unfair, it brought order and stability to an empire, and where everybody knew their place in society and was just expected to accept that place. Low caste Hindus converted to Islam. Um, Indian societies began requiring more education and better jobs to increase their social standing, not just converting to new religions. So some people who would convert to Islam because they're trying to increase their social standing, eventually societies in India realize, okay, we know what you're doing, so now we're going to make it where if you still have a crappy job, then you're still stuck in the sutra or the Vaishya. So it didn't just have to do with religion, it had to do with your occupation and your job and your contribution to the community that also determined where you were in society on the caste system. So Hindu women were confined to separate social spheres, and in India, Islam treated women the same way. So women probably didn't get the same kind of reverement or respect that in Islam in India as they probably would have gotten maybe in Saudi Arabia or even Spain when it was under Dar Islam. Okay, some cultural interactions happening here. As Islam became more dominated in India, South Asia and Middle East shared technology and cultural achievements. So look, as Islam is kind of spreading in India, you even have the Delhi Sultanate, who is now, this Islamic government. So now Islamic worlds are going to start talking to each other. So achievements that they had in India will go throughout the rest of Islam. However, achievements in other parts of Dar Islam, where Islam is spreaded, can also go to India. So we have things such as the Arabic numerals. We use it today, the whole 1 through 9. That slowly got spread through Dar Islam. That happened in the Gupta Empire in India. And then it got spread, and even today in English, we use the Arabic numeral system, right? Ideas of algebra, geometry, astronomy were translated into Arabic and spread throughout Dar Islam. So we have writings and ideas from India are now going into Islamic books in Arabic. And then we have Urdu, which is a language that they speak in Pakistan today. And what it did, it combined grammatical patterns of Hindi and the vocabulary of Arabic and Farsi to make up this brand new language called Urdu. And we got cultural interactions happening with the Bhakti movement. So the Bhakti movement, these people were just, they cared little about the texts and the rituals of Hinduism. They encouraged people to develop a strong attachment to like a particular god that was in Hinduism, like Shiva or Krishna or whatever, okay? And then kind of create their devotion to that person, build a spiritual relationship with that God. They didn't believe the rituals and the text saved them, but it was that personal relationship, that one-on-one feeling, spirituality between you and your deity. And there even became a famous Bhakti figure in the women poetry, Mirabai, who is famous for her poetry. And in her poetry, she speaks about her love and devotion to Krishna, who's a Hindu god. So even in the Bhakti movement, one of the most revered of all the poets would be Mirabai. And then, interesting, the Bhakti movement and the Sufi, the Bhakti is Hindu, the Sufi is Muslim, they have things in common. They're both mystical movements used to gain converts for Hinduism if you're Bhakti or Islam if you're Sufi. These appeal to people that did not like the strict traditions of Islam and Hinduism. But now you have this offshoot of Sufism for Islam and Bhaktiism for Hinduism, where it was more about your personal relationship with God and less about the texts and the rituals. Now we're going to go to Southeast Asia. So Southeast Asia Southeast Asia, consists of India, Malaysia, Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam. Basically, everything you see on that globe there, that's what Southeast Asia is. Trading in these regions led to diffusion of Hinduism, Buddhism, and eventually Islam. So because of heavy trade in this region, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Islam will start flourishing. First Hinduism and Buddhism, and later Islam. Controlling Southeast Asia meant controlling valuable trade between South Asia and the East and East Asia. So, the first kingdom here is called Srivijaya. Srivijaya was a Hindu kingdom. It was based in the island of Sumatra. So, if you see here, this is Sumatra, where I'm putting my little mouse. And they conquered most of this area right here. And what they did is any ships from China over here and ships from India, they had to go through this little passage called the Strait of Malacca. And every time a ship went through that passage, Srivijaya said, we're going to charge you a tax every time you come because you're going through our kingdom. So they got uber rich. And then Majapahit, the kingdom of Majapahit, it also Majapahit was much bigger. It was located on Java, which is down here, but it used the same thing. It taxed people who were trading and had to go through their kingdom as a go-between between China and India. Srivijaya is a Hindu kingdom between 670 to 1025. However, Majapahit kingdom is a Buddhist kingdom. So you need to understand that first Hinduism is spreading throughout Southeast Asia, but then Buddhism for some reason is going to overtake Hinduism in a very strong way, possibly because people felt like they were more free in the Buddhist way of thinking rather than the Hindu way of thinking with the caste system. Islam would later spread to these regions from Muslim trading. Because Sufis had tolerance for local faith traditions, many people in Indonesia converted to Islam because they were still allowed to honor their old deities. So with Sufism, you have this attitude of, look, you be Islam, but if you still feel an affinity with your other god as well, that's cool as well. You can keep honoring them. And people like that because they didn't feel like they were tied down as much. And then we're talking about two land-based kingdoms. So the Sahala dynasties, if you look in modern-day Sri Lanka, which is the island south of India today, you had the Sahala dynasties. It was located on that island, became a center of Buddhist study and devotion. So Buddhism is going to spread really big also in modern-day Sri Lanka or Ceylon. Buddhist priests acted as an advisor to the monarchs. So we even have Buddhism that is Buddhist ideas are influencing government policy. Great irrigation systems kept it economically strong. However, attacks from India from the north and internal strife caused it to fall. And the Khmer Empire. It's also known as the Angkor Kingdom. And this area, this Khmer Empire is in Southeast Asia, as you can see in the title. It covers like modern day Thailand, Cambodia, Laos. It's quite huge actually, and anyway, so it's an empire in Southeast Asia. A lot of it is this is just south of China. So it's the irrigation and drainage systems made it economically strong, making it possible to harvest rice multiple times a year. Empire begins as Hindu, so it will start off as a Hindu empire. However, later it becomes once again Buddhist. So we kind of see that pattern where Hinduism kind of flourishes for a while in Southeast Asia. However, Buddhism slowly overtakes it in Southeast Asia. Hindu holy sites became Buddhist sites. An example of that would be Angkor Wat. And then Khmer empire, well, it was defeated by uh, the Sukhothai kingdom. However, great structures like Angkor Wat and Angkor Thom still stand. And that's pretty much it. So go ahead and write your own page summary, and I'll talk to you when we get back. Thanks. Bye.